as children, we didn't know the rules of social dynamics, or we're just learning them. We wanted to have experiences firsthand. We were relentlessly curious, and we made time to play around. As adults, most of us tend to lose our inner child, or it gets diminished by societal, family, and friend expectations of how an adult should think and how an adult should behave. And when we lose our inner child, I feel as though we age faster, and we age mentally, like in a way. Aging to me is a sort of, it could be like a state of mind. Of course it's physical, and of course there's certain medical conditions when it comes to aging that could happen to somebody, that it's a medical condition, so it is mentally. But what I'm talking about in this video is the inner child in us, that for many adults tends to diminish as time goes on, and so we tend to age mentally in a way. For example, when we are talking with kids, we'll usually say, don't do that, or you shouldn't be acting that way, though in a way it's like we forget that we were once their age and most likely behaving in the same ways. And kids, because they're kids, they want to explore they want to push their limits and explore new activities and have, like I said, experiences firsthand, which as adults, it's like we see it and sometimes we're like, oh, don't do that, or like I said, don't behave this way. But it's sometimes I believe that we should let a kid behave or be in that way. I said sometimes, right? Because, like, for example, preventing a kid from getting hurt, for example. Now, of course, it depends, like, exactly what they're doing, but in some cases, I feel like there's some parents who are too hovering over their kids and, like, very worried and occupied about them getting hurt, though sometimes getting hurt, it happens to everybody, right? Getting physically injured. And as a kid, the kid is learning, okay, if I do this, I'm most likely going to get hurt. So it's a learning experience. And they're, like I said, they're pushing their boundaries, they're exploring, they're learning, because they have that relentless curiosity and the need, the want to keep trying new activities with little fear in them. And so I do find this as a positive for the kid. And so as we become adults, something else that we tend to, I feel, that gets diminished is our curiosity. Like, yeah, most adults are still curious about certain topics, but I'm talking about this relentless, like, curiosity for life and asking a bunch of questions. When you are speaking with a kid a decent amount of time, they'll be asking you a lot of questions, and they'll keep asking you sometimes the same questions over and over until they have a sufficient answer. And that's just them being a person who hasn't lived enough life to feel fear to ask that question, if that makes sense. So, or feel it's a ridiculous or silly question to begin with, because they're just, they're just starting out life, they're just learning. So but as adults, I feel it can be very harmful when we're not, it can, how do I say would I say harmful? I think I would. It can be harmful for some people to ask less questions or to not ask questions at all, because then it's because I feel if we're not asking questions as adults, or many questions about life, about where we're at in life, about, and not just productivity wise, but I'm talking about just like what is life? What is this life I'm living? I might seem like a ridiculous question to some, or it might be like, I don't know, very like cheesy or something, but it's something, I think is a decent question worth asking, because, and there's other questions in that nature, because, I only have one life, and to stop asking questions, I feel, is to just accept whatever information you're given, or most of the information you're given, without pause. And I feel like this can be harmful at times, because when somebody is just accepting what they're being told most of the time, or is just accepting the information they're being told all the time, most of the time, then it leads to thinking for yourself less and less. And therefore, I feel we're not being our full, whole selves. And part of being our full, whole selves is to stay curious and to keep asking questions. At least that's how I view it. So, and also the inner child to me encompasses having time to play around, right? Like, a lot of adult life is about this word, time management. And I feel so much of adult life is scheduled and prepackaged, and a lot of it is encompassed by jobs, by making money. So going to the job, coming back home, and then by the time you come back home, you're usually tired. So you will sit on your cell phone and scroll, or watch TV, or cook something. And then by the time or do laundry, etc., by the time you finish all that, you just want to go to sleep, and you repeat it all over again for usually 5 days a week. Then you get those 2 days off. And even in those 2 days off, how many adults are truly playing around? And when I say playing around, I just mean like what we consider like most adults consider playing around, which is like probably, it could be literal activities like doing a board game, or going outside and playing with your family member. Oh my God, I hit the mic. Your family member who is younger than you. Or it could also just be not having scheduled time, because, kids, I'm not sure if it's different in 2026, but, when I was growing up, and I think a decent amount of kids, our time is not always scheduled, like 100%. It's like, okay, at this time, aside from school, of course, like at this time, you're going to do, at 1 p.m., you're going to do this. At 2 p.m., you're going to do this. At 2:30, you're going to do this. Whereas an adult life is very much like that, where it's like, okay, at 9 a.m., you're going to be at your job. At 1 p.m., you're going to eat lunch, or have your lunch break, and then at 5 p.m. you're going to be able to leave. Whereas with a child, it's not as scheduled, once again, outside of school, so there's more time to just even be bored. And to me, being bored is technically a state of mind. I don't believe boredom is a literal condition. I believe it's a state of mind, because I feel there's always something to do. Even if it is just sitting in silence, or just looking out the window, that's still doing something. So, or just sitting with your thoughts. There's always something. That's how I view life. And so even if an adult, just wants to have unscheduled time to just sit and look out the window, or just sit with their thoughts. So that's what I also mean by playing around. It doesn't have to literally mean like playing a game or going outside and actually playing, a sport or something like that. It could also just mean sitting with yourself, as children sometimes tend to do and usually call it boredom, right? So as adults, I feel we lose a lot of this because we're so used to scheduling our time that it's like I don't think most adults schedule like an hour of their day, 30 minutes of their day, 15 minutes of their day to just, play around. So, and I feel this can also be harmful in a way. I don't know if harmful is too strong of a word, but I do feel like for it I think I could probably use that. I feel it can be harmful because then adults are just, they're not, once again, they're not getting in touch with their inner child by playing around, once again, whether that's actually playing or just sitting with themselves. And also because, as adults, as children, we don't know the social dynamics, or we're just learning them, but as adults, we know how social dynamics work. So, we have to be, we act in certain ways and behave in certain ways, which it makes sense, in a lot of the circumstances how we behave. But sometimes it's like, I feel like sometimes as adults, we just are acting in a way that isn't fully us because we're just trying to fit in to being an adult, if that makes sense. So, if you like this video, it would be great if you click the like button, and if my content interests you, it would be great if you consider subscribing to me. And thank you for listening if you listen all the way to the end.